Good morning and welcome to our final Monday morning assembly of this half of term. What has been, I can assure you, children, boys, girls, parents, a very, very busy half term indeed. And during the course of this half term, in October, we have of course been in Black History Month. And throughout the whole school year, I'm pleased to say, we will cover, I sincerely hope, all aspects of history and indeed characters who have made a difference. We will talk, for example, about Mary Seacole, we will talk about Martin Luther King, and we will do some work on principal characters who have, during the historical period, actually stood for something and made a difference. So in this morning's assembly, I am not perhaps going to focus on those characters who we would focus on throughout the school year. But I'm going to talk to you about three characters in particular. And I'm not going to do all of this by myself. I have two special guests who will be joining me during the course of the assembly. But as ever, I'm going to kick things off. And as ever, I have found an excuse to talk about cricket. And I want to share with you a character from history, I guess, certainly in playing terms. Someone who, as a cricketer, was a massive, massive inspiration to me as a bowler, who these days plies his trade as one of the best cricket commentators on the circuit. Someone who knows the game of cricket inside out, and that is Michael Holding, who these days you see on Sky News. He's also, incidentally, a keen horse racing enthusiast, which is something else we have in common. But it is the historical Michael Holding who had such an impact on me as a player. And for those of you who don't know Michael Holding and are far too young to remember Michael Holding as a player, he was fast. He played for the West Indies between 1975-76 and 1987. And he was the most brilliant, brilliant fast bowler you could imagine. Graceful. He used to glide into the wicket and he used to bowl quickly. And this was a time when the West Indies cricket team was an absolute force to be reckoned with. And there are three great moments in Michael Holding's playing career. He was one of some fantastic fast bowlers. Colin Croft, Andy Roberts, Malcolm Marshall. These guys were brilliant. And the first great moment came in 1976 when the then England captain decided that the way to beat the West Indies was to get on top of them early. And he said something that he lived to regret. And Tony Greig, as England captain, said, we're going to get on top of the West Indies, and I reckon when we get on top of them, they will cave in and we can make them grovel. And the West Indies came and toured England and absolutely demolished England. And it was the barrage of fast bowlers, and Michael Holding in particular, who was so massively impressive. And at the end of the series, when Tony Greig had again failed with the bat, he actually left the arena on his knees, grovelling. And it is a fine, fine moment in cricketing history. The second came on, I think if my memory serves me correctly, the 14th of March 1981. And Michael Holding was bowling to England's finest batsman of a generation, Geoffrey Boycott, and delivered at the Bridgetown Oval what is considered to be the best over of the century, and had Boycott, England's finest batsman, in all sorts of trouble. Ball 1 was quick, ball 2 was quicker, and it got quicker and quicker and quicker until Boycott's stumps were just thrown everywhere and Holding had dismissed him. I think you can possibly still see the footage, but sadly it is filmed from deep mid-wicket, so you can't really appreciate the speed with which Holding is bowling.
Michael Holding bowled the best over I've ever seen. It was his first, and the unfortunate batsman was Jeff Boycott. That was the first ball which Boycott just survived. The next ball whistled past his off-stump as he tried to play it. After 5 balls, Boycott was still there, but the 6th was simply unplayable. Boycott out for a duck. The most prized wicket had been taken. The oval went mad. Boycott rates Holding the fastest bowler in the world, and he hasn't changed his mind after this morning. England was 6 for 1.
And the third moment comes in 1985, when David Gower was captain of England, who of course went on to commentate for Sky Sports also. And having beaten Australia here in England and beaten them convincingly, and Gower had performed magnificently, he scored over 700 runs in the series. At the end of the series, with England due to tour the West Indies in 1986, Gower said, "I bet the West Indies are quaking in their boots," before travelling over to the West Indies, where England were once again absolutely demolished. Now at that point, Michael Holding was coming towards the end of his cricketing career. But as someone who was a bowler and nowhere near, I promise you, as quick as Michael Holding, he was an absolute hero of mine as a player, and today he remains an absolute hero of mine as a commentator, because there are few who know the game as well. I'm now going to introduce you to our first guest in Assembly, who's going to talk about another fascinating character from history. I'm delighted to introduce Ahmed, who's going to talk to you about Pablo Frank.
I'm going to talk to you about Pablo Frank. He was born in 1810 and was a circus master. He made his own circus in 1841, and his specialty was riding horses, and he could also make them dance. Pablo Frank made lots of posters to make people come to his circuses. His circuses went around the city and became very popular. He was also the inspiration to the Beatles. Here is some of our work on Pablo Frank.
Well done to Ahmed there. And I know Mr. Robinson tells me how much the boys have enjoyed studying Pablo and finding out all about him and his contribution to the circus. Now another treat for you. A good number of years ago, when I went to my secondary school, I met a fantastic chap by the name of Nick Bailey. And Nick Bailey and I have been friends for years and years and years, and remain very good friends. I went into education. Nick went down the line of acting, and as is so often the case in that line of work, found it pretty tough in the early days, had the odd break and appeared on, I think, the bill, first of all. Parents, you remember that? Was then, I think, briefly in Coronation Street, and then made his name playing Dr. Truman in EastEnders. Nick is multi-dimensional. He also is a fantastic Shakespearean actor on the stage. He lectures in acting skills and other skills within the wider world. He is a truly, truly inspirational man in his own right. But Nick always liked the last word. So I leave the last word to my great friend Nick Bailey, who is going to talk to you about his inspiration.
Hello, my name's Nicholas Bailey, and as I'm sure you're aware, this month marks Black History Month 2020. And I just want to take a moment to introduce someone to you who has not only been an inspiration in British society, and is a big figure in British history, but somebody who's a personal inspiration to me and a hero to me. His name is Walter Daniel Tull, pioneering footballer and soldier. Now, Walter was born in 1888 and died just shy of his 30th birthday in 1918. But in his short life, he packed in a lot of incredible achievements. Now, at the time when Walter was born, Queen Victoria was on the throne, and it was tough to be black and gifted in this country. There was a lot of racism and a lot of hardship that he had to overcome, but he overcame it. Before he was 10 years old, he'd lost both his parents. Then, with his closest brother, Edward, he ended up in an orphanage and in a children's home. Edward was adopted, after which time Walter was there on his own for several years, but he discovered football. And the list of achievements from there reads like something you could barely believe. Walter became the first black outfield footballer to play in what was then the First Division. He was the first black footballer for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. He became the first black player for Northampton Town. Then he went on to be the first sports person to enlist in the British Expeditionary Force. So he was the first person to enlist for the army when the First World War broke out. But probably his crowning glory was to become the first black officer in a home-born British Army regiment. He became a second lieutenant in 1917, which was unheard of, especially as military law said that black people were not even to be enlisted. He went on to distinguish himself in several battles and was decorated, mentioned in dispatches, and some people have said he deserved a military cross. He was killed in the Second Battle of the Somme whilst being involved in the charge, and such was the reverence that people held him in that his comrades tried time and time again to retrieve him from the battlefield. Now, Walter was a leader, and in leadership we think about certain qualities, don't we? We think about qualities of integrity, strong values, the fact that you uplift people who are around you, you make strong decisions, and you lead by example. Walter had all these qualities, certainly. But for me, that's not what makes him a true hero. You see, Walter's decisions and his actions made him a great leader. They made him a great hero. He was a great hero in situations. And the thing about that is that you begin to think of leadership not as a noun, but as a verb. So if Walter can lead and make those decisions and make those actions, perhaps I can too. And that's the reason why Walter's so special to me, because he shows me what's possible. He shows me that anybody can lead, and leadership is something that you can assume, that you can grow into, that you can do when the need surfaces. So that's the reason why Walter shows me that leadership is possible for all of us, and that's why he's such a special individual, because through his decisions and his deeds and his mindset the way he showed up in life, in his everyday interactions as well as on the battlefield and on the football field. He overcame obstacles and decided that he was going to take control of his life and that he was going to make society and the world a little bit better for him having existed in it. And that's what makes Walter so very, very special to me. And that's why I can be Walter and so can you. So if you think about leadership, think about this. If Walter could have done that at that time when it was so difficult to, what can I do today? And lastly, I want to wish you a very, very happy Black History Month. Now go out there and lead.